You're listening to the Ringer NBA show presented by FanDuel. FanDuel has made it easier than ever to see how your bets are doing without even opening the app. Because now you can get the latest updates and follow along in real time directly from your phone's lock screen or Apple Watch. No login required. Just head to your My Bets page to turn it on. And if you don't already have it, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today to get in on the action. The Ringer is committed to responsible gambling. Please visit rg-help.com to learn more about the resources and helplines available and listen to the end of the episode for additional details. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
Folks, it's J. Kyle Mann from The Ringer. And as always, basketball is so freaking good. It's so good, in fact, that The Ringer's NBA Draft Show is finally back just in time for a ramp up to June. We've got you covered every week as we take an in-depth look at who's got next for the NBA's future. We'll talk the rising and falling stocks of the best and the brightest prospects in the 2025 NBA draft class, from Cooper Flagg to Dylan Harper to VJ Edgecombe and more. Tap in with me on the Ringer NBA Draft Show every Wednesday and make sure that you follow, subscribe, and hit us with those 5-star ratings.
What's poppin'? Ruins, Logan, Murdock here, Raja Bell there, Howard motherfucking Beck in the cut, Cliff on the boards, Victoria on the video. We have a fun slate today, but I think we're going to take a bit of a curveball onto the slate. We're going to talk a little Suns, talk a little Memphis, but beforehand, we're going to talk about some crash outs. Raja, did you see the brawl in Minnesota between the Pistons and the Timberwolves, and what are your thoughts, sir?
It wasn't a brawl. I mean, there was some pushing and shoving going on. Like, yeah, I saw it. But what are my thoughts? I mean, shit happens, right? Like, you're out there competing. People get upset. Words are thrown around. Gets a little physical. Eventually, somebody gets pushed more than they want to be pushed. And shit erupts. It was unfortunate that it landed where it landed in the front row. Can't have that. We've already touched that on this pod and many other pods. Like, that brings in a whole level of liability that the league can't have. But other than that, like I mean, I know in today's news cycle, like, we just blow everything up. Everything is like, every loss, somebody's getting fired or they're not an all-star. Every win, a motherfucker's a champion or they're the best player on the planet. Like, that wasn't shit. It really wasn't. Like, it wasn't shit. Like, they got upset. Mofo started pushing and shoving. Oh well.
I love it. I love it mostly because like, there's so often, Raja, where like this is always about like players from previous eras dumping on the modern game. It's usually about like threes and everything else. It's more fun though, actually, when it's like, you call that a brawl? You call that a brawl? You ain't seen a brawl. Go to YouTube and go, or do, what's the NBA Cobwebs account on the social media accounts, and you can see like what brawls actually looked like when they were brawls and when like guys were seriously throwing down.
Yeah, and I wasn't in any. Let's be clear, I wasn't in any either. Like, by the time we came around, they were still like, you know, nobody was throwing real punches. Like, if they did, it was very rare. But like, come on.
By modern standards, this one was alarming in terms of how many sheer bodies were in that moving scrum, and the fact that it fell into it was a scrum.
It was a player scrum.
That was a rugby scrum, man. But that's the thing, like, it's not, in the old days, punches are thrown and you see it, and you see like actual, like, you know, fists flying. This was like just a moving pile of bodies that fell into the front row, which is bad. Very bad.
Bro.
Don't do that. Don't get fans endangered. Like, primary thing here. And we've seen it, and not just Malice at the Palace, but like there was the Knicks Nuggets brawl way back in the day. My first season on, not my first season, was it? Yeah, it was my.
That
first
wasn't
season
even really a brawl either, though, Howard. The Nuggets Knicks one, bro, when Carmelo like kind of like smacked him and then ran all the other way from the court.
Carmelo backpedaled like a cornerback for like 50 yards to try to avoid getting punched. But Nate Robinson and J.R. Smith rolled into the first row of seats at the Garden.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, that happened, and those guys were going at it. like anything that ends up encroaching on the fans and the seats is a problem. And there was just a sheer number of bodies here. And we have like coaches being like JB Bickerstaff and Pablo Prigioni being ejected. So like it was a spectacle, but it's not like a serious brawl by historical NBA standards. And like the suspensions just came out, and they seem about appropriate. And Isaiah Stewart's history has something to do with him getting more games than everybody else.
It wasn't like, remember Kareem Abdul-Jabbar punched Kent Benson? Like he got elbowed. Did you guys see this clip where he gets elbowed in the chest? He takes a breath and just, oh, Kent Benson.
He side snuck him, right?
Or like, I'm thinking about other great brawls. We shouldn't condone this, but I'm going to just go there anyway. Like, wasn't there like a time the Celtics versus the Sixers when like Larry Bird punched like Dr. J and somebody like held Dr. J up or something to get punched, or it was something like that, but it was a brawl between the Celtics and the Sixers. We don't have that no more.
There were all kind of brawls, man. Everybody was getting scooped and slammed and like punching like back in those days. Like it's just, hey man, it's really, I mean, nobody wants to hear this, but like to put it's hard to get both things, right? It's hard to get people to like. You often hear the NBA fan, oh, these guys don't care. They're out there just kind of going through the motions. Like, you get that argument sometimes from some casuals and stuff like that. But what I would say is, it's hard to ask people to pick up how much they care and the level of intensity with which they play. And then at the same time, ask them not to get close to that line where emotions are going to boil over, right? So like the harder you play, the deeper you get into a season, the more that's on the line. Typically the closer you get to the line of like, hey man, like I'll fight you for this, right? It means more to me now. Now that wasn't a playoff game, but I guess what I'm saying is like, I don't all the way mind being close to that line. Now I agree with Howard. Like we can't be in the stands, things like that can't happen. We don't want to be fighting every night. But if you told me I was going to get cats that were at each other's throats a little bit more, and because of that, I was going to get a couple of these, every few months, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think go ahead. I think also like with the NBA, and I know like shouldn't be in the stands and fighting, but I feel like specifically, I think it's because the Pistons game was so just viral and everything that you can think about it. Like the Malice in the Palace was so monumental. It just effectively legislated it out, and for good reason. But like the stigma that NBA fights get versus say like hockey or like even NFL football and college football, it's pretty jarring, right? Like it's really hard, to your point, Raja, to flip that switch, right? Where you're in such a competitive environment and you're literally like fighting for position and all these things, to not expect the other thing to happen and just turn it off and be like, it's a real just weird thing to do and to an environment to be in. But I do think that specifically when we talk about NBA basketball or fights in basketball, it seems to have a different connotation than when we talk about any other sport.
That's always been weird, but like that's a bigger conversation about like, and stuff. I'm not going to get into that. I just say the psychology of it when, the old guard, for the most part, when I came into the league, those dinosaurs still existed where like, you don't really talk to the dude you're about to play against. Like we're going out there to the jump ball circle and no one said a word to anybody other than like a fist bump or something like that, because
the Kurt Thomases, the Charles Oakleys,
Yeah, we're about to get this cracking. Like, I don't want to be your friend right now. This isn't friendly for the next however many minutes we're all on the court together. So that kind of like transition to more of a brotherhood, a fraternity. And I'm all for that. But it got to a point even when I played where, guys would try to befriend you at the jump ball circle. I was wired the other way. I didn't have the room, the margin for error to not be like razor sharp, right? So like I couldn't be your friend and then go do what I thought I had to do to be effective. So I was still kind of wired like that. And guys were already like, hey man, let's just go through let's just get this done tonight. You know what I mean? And I never understood that. Like I never really got that, but I watched the pendulum swing all the way to like, everyone's cool with each other for the most part. And that's okay. Like I'm not saying that I have a problem with that in any way, shape, or form, but like if you want cats to really get after each other, they've got to get closer to the line of wanting to fight each other than some people are comfortable with. If you really want them to like compete.
And ultimately, I think that makes the game more entertaining, to be honest with you, right? Like, not fighting all the time, but like a good competitive edge every game, I think is great for the game and the watchability of the game, to be honest with you.
I've never been one of these people who like tried to glorify the 90s or even the 80s with all the like, oh, it was better when there was fighting. No, it's not better when it was fighting. Like the fact that they've cleaned up the game over time, like on some perverse level, it's entertaining when we see those old clips and we go, oh man, look what it was like back in the day. But let's be real. That does not make for a better game. And the violence doesn't need to be part of the game. So we don't want to glorify that. But I do think, and I'm curious how Raja feels about this, because we've talked about this on this pod many times where, you know, like playing on the edge, there's an advantage to that and sometimes a necessity of that. And I think in the case of the Pistons in particular, as I'm looking at this, like we kind of know who the Timberwolves are more or less. The Pistons are new. Like this is their breakthrough season. JB Bickerstaff is in the running for Coach of the Year. Cade Cunningham is in the running for All NBA. Malik Beasley's in the running for Sixth Man of the Year. Like these guys are coming on strong, and these suspensions are now hitting us at a time where they're right down the stretch. They're still locked in a seeding race, right? Like the Pistons, as we record this, are 42-33, fifth in the East. 2 losses behind the Pacers, 1 loss ahead of the Bucks. Those 3 teams are still jockeying with a couple weeks to go here. And the Pistons now, because of these suspensions, are going to be without Isaiah Stewart. Like, I mean, it's not like losing Cade Cunningham, who they've already been without recently because of injury. But now they lose Isaiah Stewart he's been suspended 2 games. That's the announcement that came out just as we were about to hop on. Ron Holland suspended 1 game, Sasser 1 game, and then on Timberwolves side of it, Naz Reid and DiVincenzo each suspended a game. And the Timberwolves are still in a seedings battle too. Like right now, they're in, a tie for 7th and 8th with the Clippers, and they're only a loss back of the Warriors for 6th. So there's real world consequences. But all that's to say, Raja, what did we just learn about, if anything, the Pistons, and how like does this give us any insight into who they might be in the playoffs? Like we already knew they were kind of a feisty team. The suspensions aren't great, fights aren't great, but is there some silver lining here about like the character of the Pistons in terms of going in as this young upstart in the playoffs and what they might be able to do?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Yeah, I think we kind of already knew it though, Howard. But if anyone was unsure about whether or not they would stand in the paint and like be 10 toes down, like that, they should know now, right? Like, and I think, I've always said, you give me something like as a player, right? Like if I'm coaching a team and I have these 2 equal, parts basketball players in terms of skill level, and one of them is just way aggressive and over the top and is getting into some shit sometimes, and the other one is kind of like meek. Give me the over aggressive one. I think I could scale it back. I don't want the one that it's harder for me to put the fire in you than it is for me to dampen your fire. Yeah. So I want teams and players, provided we're not too far over a line, to have that edge about them. And certainly a team that's trying to cut their teeth and make a statement. And, we were on here with Ben, and we were talking about them being able to potentially win a playoff series. If you are a team like the Pistons coming into these playoffs, no one gave us a shot at it. It's us against the world. You fostered that mentality and that kind of like backbone all year. Like that's been in their DNA cooking since the time they went to training camp. So, the fact that it showed itself, this late in the season is unfortunate for the suspension reasons, but I like them even more than I did, and I liked them already.
Is that what you and Sheed were talking about on Friday, Raja, where there's just certain players that just have whatever it is for the postseason that you don't really have to teach and don't really have an adjustment process, as opposed to, the other teams that could be fish out of water when it comes to the playoffs? Do you think that the Pistons have shown you to this point that they can be ready for an environment like that? And maybe the adjustment period just is going to be slower or faster than maybe another team that's fish out of water.
Yeah, that's going to be TBD, Logan. I mean, clearly, there's a part of physicality that comes with playoff basketball that they seem to be ready for, right? Like you could see that, in what they do, right? Like they're not going to run away from the actual physical fight, but there's so much more that goes into playoff basketball and being ready to play at that time. Like we're talking about concentration levels. We're talking about guys' ability, within those concentration levels to stay locked in on a game plan, to execute over and over again. You're talking about discipline in a way that you can have all that toughness. And like I was unable to do in that series against Kobe, not go over the line because now we're in a playoff scenario and I can't cost myself these games. So like there's a lot that goes into determining whether or not they're ready. We'll find that out. But I think the first thing you want to know about your team is that you're tough. Outside of like, we're good enough to earn our seed, is that we're tough and we're not going to back down from a fight. And I think that about them. And then, look, the playoffs are just a different animal. Like some people are going to sink and some are going to swim. You won't know that until they're in them.
Okay, so we talked about the Pistons side of this. What about the Timberwolves side of this fight? Like, what do you think is the out? What comes to mind when you see their point coming out of this brouhaha? Does it bring them together, or does it show cracks in what they even have going this season, which has been disappointing thus far?
Personally, I don't think it. I mean, their cracks are their cracks, but
because they seem to be a team afterwards too, because they won the game.
Yeah, and I think whenever you have something like that kind of someone has to stand up for somebody in a way that's going to cost them something real, and they take the opportunity to do that, that's galvanizing. Like dudes understand the code. Like we might be in a funky place as a team. We might not all be loving on each other the same way that we were a month ago. But if somebody from one of these other teams tries one of my people out here on the court in a way that is disrespectful, and I think he's in harm's way, then that's my brother, and I got to stand up for that. And sometimes that just reminds teams, like, hey, we're family, bro. Like, we're all in this together. Whether we hit a rough patch or not, when push comes to shove, I ride with you. And so I don't know what comes of it for Minnesota, but I don't think it's a fracturing moment for them. If anything, I think it would go the other way.
I also think like Minnesota, despite whatever cracks we have seen this season or just the adjustment to Julius Randle instead of Towns and everything else, like it has been a little bit of a funky season, but like guys, they've come around. Like they're 11-4 over their last 15 with a net rating of plus 11.
And their morale seems to be pretty good too, right? Like it doesn't seem like they're breaking apart at the seams. Like the next team.
I mean, I'd rather see them fighting the Pistons than each other. But yeah, last 15 games, and small sample size, all that stuff. But like last 15 games, 11-4, fourth best net rating in the NBA behind Oklahoma, Boston, and the Clippers. So two of those teams are expected to be in the finals, and the Clippers have also been very good recently. So Minnesota's interesting right now. Like to be where they are in the standings looks like a huge disappointment and a come down from last season. But I don't know, man. Like they're looking pretty good at the moment, and it's like the West is just funky, right? Like between that whole grouping, right? Like, all right, we're probably writing off Memphis. We'll talk about them later. No one's sure what to make of Houston. They're going to be the second seed, and we're all still going to be sitting here going, like, are we sure? Are we sure they're good? But like Denver, Lakers, Warriors, Wolves, Clippers. I don't know how to parse that group. I think anything goes.
Yeah, and the Timberwolves have quietly been one of the hottest teams in the league post All-Star break too, right? Like they have the only reason why they probably haven't gone up in the standings because the Warriors have been holding firm post Jimmy Butler, right? Like they have been playing well and been neck and neck to get out of the play-in race. And, we'll see what happens tonight with the Warriors. And, they have a tough schedule going forward. But, like, Timberwolves, they're only a half game out of the play-in or out of that tournament. So, I mean, they should be good. And whoever plays against them, they should get out of that. And we'll see what happens with the Wolves.
Hey, let me tell you about one of my favorite bets that FanDuel has right now. They're called Player Performance Doubles. If you don't know about them, you got to check them out. There are these 2-leg parlays already made for you. FanDuel takes an NBA player prop, then combines it with a bet on that player's team to win. They have a bunch of them for you every game. You just have to pick the one you like. For me tonight, Sixers at Knicks. I'm going to take Karl Anthony Towns, 25 plus points, and the Knicks for the W. And whether you want to ride with my pick or make your own, FanDuel is giving all customers a profit boost exclusively for these bets on Tuesday. So just head to FanDuel.com/RingerNBA to get your profit boost. Make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states or 18 plus and present in DC. Opt-in required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including any token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
Speaking of crash outs, let's talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. Me and Raja and Sheed were like talking about it in real time, and it was one of those things in a podcast where you're like, "Oh, this news went down. What the hell is going on here? Oh my God, what the hell?" This information just coming in at the moment, but now we have a little bit more context, right? Taylor Jenkins has been fired. There was a big athletic story that came out that was really good. You guys go check that out. I think it was also an ESPN story that came out today about saying mostly about the same things, but the crux of the situation is this. Zach Kleiman and the Memphis Grizzlies front office decided to gut Taylor Jenkins' staff and replace it in the offseason, and his new assistants implemented a new offense that did not play to the strengths of Ja Morant, their best player and franchise star. And then Ja Morant gets upset, and they fired Taylor Jenkins. Then, in a twist of fate, put in a coach that actually championed the offense that Ja didn't like. So I'll start with Beck here. Where the hell are we with the Memphis Grizzlies, and where do we go from here? Where do they go from here with 9 games left in the season?
I did make some calls about this in the last couple of days just to try to get a better sense of it, because it was weird, right? Like, you guys were reacting in real time on Friday going, wait a minute, there's 9 games left of the season. Who fires their coach with a playoff bound team, still top 5 or 6, whatever they were at the time, with 9 games left in the season? Like, that just doesn't happen. Like, people were scrambling. The stat people were scrambling. The Elias Sports Bureau was scrambling. Oh, has this ever happened in the history of the league? And like, it is incredibly unusual. And the warning signs were there, right? Now there's a piece of this where it's just injuries. Jaws missed a ton of games. They lost Brandon Clark again. He's really important for them. There's an aspect of this where if they just were healthy, maybe we don't get to this point. But what I've learned over the last couple of days is, like, you know, and I haven't read all the coverage at ESPN. I saw the athletic story a few days ago. There were cracks behind the scenes. Like, there just were cracks. There were fissures developing between members of the coaching staff itself, I think, and also between the coaching staff and the players, and all of that was leaching into what was happening out on the court. And we can talk about the offense, and we should, but it was, you know, defensively, which had been their backbone for a while, where they really had just, you know, eroded so badly that it became untenable. So what I will say about the timing is this. I was as shocked as everybody else. I thought it was unusual, and I actually thought in real time, my first impulse was, this is a mistake. Like, you've got some instability going on here. How does removing your seasoned head coach, who has, these guys have all come up under, and who has been one of the better head coaches in the league, who everybody agrees is going to get snapped up as soon as somebody has an opening this summer. Like, Taylor Jenkins is not going to be out of work for very long. And I think he's still highly regarded in Memphis too, for that matter. But as much as I was shocked in the moment, and as much as I thought this is more instability by removing the head coach, I think where I've landed is this, and based on what I've learned, there's a realization that at a certain point, this season has kind of gotten away from you. I don't think anybody in Memphis expects that replacing Taylor Jenkins with Thomas, I think it's Isalo. I don't think anybody who, you know, is a rookie coach in the NBA, you know, no one's expecting like there's going to be some magical turnaround. This is not going to put them in the conference finals. They may not even be winning a playoff series. But where I admire what the Grizzlies did is this. We see so often in this league where teams just don't have the conviction to do what needs to be done, or they know something's going the wrong direction, or they're too worried about optics or the politics of it or whatever. they concluded that things were not going to turn around under Taylor Jenkins. So why are we waiting to meander through the rest of a regular season, get our butts kicked in the play-in or the playoffs, and then fire him? We already know we want to make the change. Let's just do it now. So kudos to them for having the conviction to decide we don't care how it looks that it's 9 games left. We already know where this is going, and we already know what our conclusion is. What are we doing waiting for the offseason?
Roger, you want to take this or
Being professionals is what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Being a professionally run organization, bro. Like,
you're saying that firing him is unprofessional?
Yes, there are 9 games left in the season.
Yeah, right. With 9 games left in the season, Howard, and you're admitting that, like, if you're the franchise saying this cat's not getting us better, we don't expect Issa, whatever his name is, to help us. Like, there's not going to be a reset button that he hits, and we're going to have this. Like, we're just saying we know we need to make the move, so we'll do it 9 games before the playoffs starts.
Roger. By the way, Roger, hold on. No. By the way. They gutted his staff in the summer, which meant they didn't fuck with him anyway, right? Like
already. So that's the time. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Thank you, Logan. That would have been the time to do that. That would have been the professional move. But my bad, Howard. This is the only thing I'll say. If I were in that front office, I would have never advocated for it because I don't believe that you can put a team in the best position to be their all in 9 games in a playoff run. And ultimately, I'm trying to help them be the best version of themselves. And so I would not have advocated for it.
And my understanding of, I think that's fair. And like I said, my initial reaction was this is not helping you. Firing your head coach with 9 games to go is not going to put you in a better position to advance in the playoffs. I don't think anybody there believes that either. I think the way we should interpret this is this is a concession. They've conceded that things aren't going the right way regardless. With Taylor Jenkins, without Taylor Jenkins, we think we're going to land in the same place within the next 3-4 weeks. And if that's the case, let's at least see what things look like. Because behind the scenes, again, this is my understanding of things, having had a few conversations. My understanding is like things were worse than what we are seeing, right?
So you're telling me it was untenable. If it was untenable, that's that's where we're at. All right.
Like players are pulling away, players are not following the system anymore, defensively, offensively, and I think especially defensively. So if you're in the front office and you see and you can tell this much better from that vantage point than we can from the outside. If you saw that your players weren't responding to your coach anymore, as decorated as that coach might be, or as respected as he might be, and as much success as he might have had with your team, if you've already concluded it's done, he's cooked, they're not listening, do you wait I could still make the case for waiting a few weeks because that's the normal course of events. What I'm saying is I do admire the fact that they decided we already know the conclusion, so why wait? And, and we're going to lose the first round at best anyway.
If you want to give them real one of the week for that, okay, that's a real move. I feel you, but that's not the way typically business is done in the NBA. And I actually do have some experience with this. My first gig ever back in the NBA after doing a little bit of work on TV and stuff like that was consulting with the team. I was brought in late in the season to come be around the team, watch practices, watch a game, get a feel for it. And then the report and what I was asked was, does this coach still have the ear of the team? Is this team still bought into the messaging? And it was immediate, absolutely not. They're out. And you could feel that. You could see that. Yeah. You could sense that in the building. So if that's what you're telling me, then I do understand you saying, hey, this road has come to an end, right? Yeah. And that's essentially what I told this team. This road has come to an end. And it was weirdly in and about the same exact time and part of the season. It was probably 10, maybe 15 games left in the season. And that team didn't move. They just said, okay, we got it. We know we're going to be in the market this summer. If you're telling me in a world, Howard, I'm trying to be fair, that the gentleman who's getting the job right now is going to be one of the front runners to retain the job, and you want to give him a 9-game plus playoff interview process to see what he can really do. But I don't know that I believe that. If you were to tell me that, I'd say, okay, it's still kind of weird. I think Taylor Jenkins deserves the, respect, if you will, to finish the season out and see what he can do in the playoffs. I think I would argue that, but I could see the logic on the other side of it. But if you're just going to let this dude play it out and then you're going to go out and get into the pool looking for someone with head coaching experience and bring them in there. I don't understand it.
I got a couple of things on this really quickly. One of these things is I think we're speaking and we're not acknowledging the fact that the Memphis Grizzlies front office created this problem that they felt like they needed to solve at the end of the season or at this stretch of the season. They're the ones that put this coach in place to be an assistant, basically cutting the legs of the head coach right in front of him, like while he stood, right? And when I heard about this and we got more context, I kept thinking about the Sacramento Kings and what they did in the offseason. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies front office is way more respected and rightfully so. But they essentially did the same thing where you place a coach as a figurehead, but you do everything to undermine his coaching ability. And that there's something to be said for that around the league, right? Because whatever is going on in the building, perception in this league and perception in general is everything. And the perception is right now, for better or worse, is the Grizzlies don't know what the hell they're doing right now. Because why would you put a coach and fire a coach with 9 games left, and then also put the new interim coach in a weird position to coach out these last 9 games? Morale is probably shit right now, and then try to give him an audition in the playoffs where it's a completely different game, and they're going up. They could go play up against either the Lakers, they could go play against the Nuggets, teams that have already have some level of championship experience with LeBron and Jokic, and also are pretty much hitting. I'm talking about the Lakers are like hitting their stride. That's such an unfair predicament to put them in, right? And then on the other point of this is you put in an interim coach that it would be one thing if there was an interim coach that the team like loves. Like I'm thinking about Antonio Pierce with my Raiders for that, stretch when he first got the job and the players loved him and they rallied around him. I don't see that happening in Memphis. So when I get what you're saying, Howard, but when I think it through, I mean, this doesn't – one, the perception is bad, which is a league-wide perception that they are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and being professional about a situation, basically undermining a coach and not making him want to – putting him in a position where he can't trust the people around him. And it's a bad position when a head coach can't trust his assistant coaches. Again, we just saw that in Sacramento. So, like, I feel what you're saying, but on the other side, like, perception is everything, and the perception is Memphis don't know what the hell they're doing right now. We haven't gotten to the job part.
I think you're right that the perception on the outside is you see all this happen and you just think, good Lord, what a mess. You flushed his entire assistant coaching staff. Again, incredibly rare in the NBA that a coach is forced to turn over his entire staff at the direction of the front office. And that happened last year. And that was a shot across the bow. That was probably an indication that maybe that was the time to fire Taylor Jenkins. If you don't trust him enough to allow him to continue with the coaching staff that he constructed, and you're bringing in all these other guys, like that's a bad sign anyway. So I give you that. And I think the perception of them has probably been a little bit skeptical because of that all the way through what has just happened. But there's some nuance here. And I would just say, like, again, if you've already concluded, so they probably concluded almost a year ago, right? So maybe they should have fired him then. Okay, they didn't. They kept Taylor Jenkins. They replaced all the assistants. The new assistants came in. They install a new offense that de-emphasizes jaw, that de-emphasizes pick and roll. That's much more, kind of ball and player movement. Like aesthetically, maybe more pleasing, not more effective because you've just de-emphasized the best assets of your best player. One of the assistant coaches that they fired with Jenkins, LaRoche, was the one who, as I understand it, was the kind of the architect of that new offense. Isolo, the guy that they've now installed, brought him in as assistant coach. He's from Finland. He was renowned overseas as a pick and roll coach, and not just basic pick and roll, but as a really innovative pick and roll offense that he installs. So, not dismissing anything you just said, Logan, but I will say, in terms of like, are they in a better place now? It's a rookie head coach who just came to the NBA. He's not in a great position to succeed right now. However, we've already seen in his first couple games, and they've lost them both, but these are tough opponents too. They're going back to more pick and roll. They're going back to where Ja has more control of the offense again. And maybe there's some balance in between, right? Like I'm not a big advocate of like just give it to the one guy all the time. I hate heliocentric offense. I'm not a big fan of like 99% pick and roll either. I like ball player movement. I like what the Warriors do. But you've got John, he's your best player, and you should cater to his best talents, and him standing in the corner waiting for kickouts is not the best use of him at all. So they are, at least with this change, and you could argue maybe you could have done this without firing the head coach. Maybe you could have just said, why not, have Isolo's offense instead of LaRoche's offense or whatever. But this is where they are. And I think it's going to at least put guys in a better position. And maybe they're at least engaged again. Because again, from what I understand, there were some fractures there and players, were kind of going their own way.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, I didn't know the guy's background in terms of pick and roll, and his ability to coach it, teach it, so on and so forth. It would be interesting to me. Like, I really would. The question of whether or not when the job becomes available, if he's actually in consideration for it. I mean, you're saying he's So I want to be fair to them, and I hear everything that you're saying, Howard. I would just go to what Logan said, which is the dysfunction. Like, while I would just take it a step further. Like, if you're going to deconstruct the old coaching staff, right, and you're going to implement a new offense and bring in a new staff that helps you get to those objectives, and Ja isn't a part of those conversations, then either Ja isn't your franchise player moving forward in your estimation, or you fucked up. Like, that's not something that you take a player of Ja's, ability. I'm not comparing him necessarily to Luka or Kobe, but I mean, he is your Luka or Kobe or what have you. You don't bring in a new system and say, hey guys, let's sit behind these closed doors as dudes who have never really done this, and we're going to decide what Ja's going to look best doing. That's not how that shit works. But you're supposed to go to Ja Morant and say, hey, Ja, listen, bro, we're going to bring in a new staff. I'd like you to sit down and hear what he's got to say offensively or not. I'm pretty sure Ja Morant would be either like, yeah, I either like that or I don't like that. So I would say it's dysfunctional in that you even got to the point where you brought someone in and installed him, and he then installed an offense that Ja Morant was like, what is this bullshit? Right? Like, that in and of itself is slightly dysfunctional. And I've said this before to owners in the NBA, to executives in the NBA. You got to be really careful. And I haven't said it to coaches, but any coach who might listen to this, man, fight for your staff, dude. Staffs are teams within teams. They're teams within teams. And so like on any team, you could have a head coach, and by definition and by job description, he's the alpha. And you might have an assistant who's got an alpha personality and can't not have the alpha personality, right? And so the dynamics there, and the chemistry is a very kind of precarious thing. It's like a chemistry experiment on any team, and a coaching staff is a team within a team. So like, you got to make sure you have the right people with the person that you believe is the right person to run the show. That was Taylor Jenkins. Let him have the staff. You can't be gifting people staffs. You see it on different levels where people are like, hey man, we like this head coach. They did it to Mike D'Antoni to some degree. Friend of the show, Steve Kerr and them. Like, man, Mike D'Antoni had what he liked. They were telling Mike he had to get rid of Dan and he had to do this and he had to do that. Mike was like, I'm not doing that, I'm out. Because Mike knew his team. Now, you could say Mike didn't win a championship and all of that's fair. But Mike was like, hey man, I don't want you coming in here, messing with my day-to-day. Those coaches spend so many hours together, bro. They're doing so much work together. They're together an inordinate amount of hours. You want people that you like to be around, and people that you don't have to fight for control with, and people that understand your vision and are collaborative. And so you just got to be really careful when you do that. And I think all of that speaks to some dysfunction. I got to side with Logan a little bit. I understand what you're saying, Howard.
I think this is a good time. Well, one, I want to acknowledge what Roger said in terms of like coaches. Like, that is, and I know Howard would agree with this, man. Like, coaching staffs, it's like a circle of trust, man. If you can't trust your coaching staff, it's really bad for the entire team. And there have been a lot of coaches that have been fired. And I'm not saying this necessarily for Memphis, but there's been a lot of coaches that have been fired because of some backstabbing BS because they didn't trust their staff. Like, that is a very common thing in this league, and I'm sure in sports in general. And that's something that you always have to look out for. And I don't know the situation and why, and Taylor Jenkins' role in the staff being cut, but it would have behooved them to have a bit more symmetry and trust there, because I don't think we would be in this position right now. Either way, if they would have just made a decision. But I do want to talk about the Ja element of this. And I think Howard Beck is a great person to talk to about the Ja's.
I heard you guys name check me on Friday. Took me a little bit out of context, but that's okay.
Yeah. Now we're about to put you right back into context. But I think one of the things, and to Raj's point about Ja Morant supposed to be the franchise star, at least as the face of the franchise to us. But it doesn't seem like over the last couple of years, if you read the tea leaves, that he is thought of in the same vein around the Memphis organization, right? And I mean, there are reasons for that. And I'm looking at his basketball reference right now. Hasn't played more than 67 games in a season. That was his rookie year. Had even his MVP season. It's crazy. Like, I thought he played more games. I thought there was a season where his MVP, when he got MVP votes, probably his best season, and the 21-22 season when they went to the second round, I believe. He only played 57 games, right? He's not available. There's the off-court stuff that we've been seeing. What if you read the tea leaves, Howard? Is this Memphis saying, talking about what happened with Taylor Jenkins and changing the offense, which is kind of unprecedented, just changing the offense away from the style that your star player likes and expecting him to just go with it? Was there precedent, and what are the tea leaves saying about how this came about for Ja? And is our perception that he is a franchise star actually reality, or do Memphis think different?
I mean, look, in Ja's defense, his availability the last couple of years has been more about injury than anything else. There was the suspension. There were the incidents that led to that suspension. As far as we know, and it wasn't just the suspension, right? There was all kinds of stories, stuff that happened with him and his buddies and the whatever Ja and that confrontation with the kid he played pickup with or whatever. Like there were a lot of alarming things, concerning things, I think, in Ja's early career. It's been pretty quiet for the last, I'd say 2 years without looking up anything. I think this is, in his defense, like there's been a good stretch here where there's not anything.
And I think he's put better people around him, right? Not even just like friends and stuff, but like, security and like just an overall team around him that is
there
better.
Are limits to what, but there's a limit to what the franchise or the league can do on that, right, Logan? Like, we can all sit here and say like, oh, they got to clean this up, but like, these guys they're grown men. They're going to do what they want to do. So I think like his image took a hit, his standing took a hit, the lack of availability and the injuries, like all of that has played a role in this. But like his playing style and his build plays a role in this too, right? Like, Raja, you played with Iverson, like not the same, but like slightly built guys who play a super aggressive style, who are always crashing into guys in the paint. And like, it's part of what makes them so much fun to watch. Like Iverson was a blast to watch because of his fearlessness. And same with Ja, but man, that dude takes a beating. He's on the court on his butt a lot. And so, you're going to lose games to that. And because he's not a good 3-point shooter, that kind of limits how many ways you can attack. And so I would worry about Ja's longevity and his health long-term. And I think that his availability, like all these things are sewn together, but he's your best player. He's a franchise player. Like to Logan's question, like, is he the superstar that is ultimately going to be able to carry them on deep playoff runs or put them in title contention? I have my doubts. I think it's fair to have doubts at this stage, 6 years into his career. But I do think the Grizzlies are fully committed to that core of Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, right? Like that, for better or worse, that's their big three. You could say you believe in that big three or don't believe in it, but that's their core. They've done a really good job the last few years of like finding like, the Jalen Wellses and the Gigi Jacksons and like these kind of core rotation players who they find late in the draft or undrafted or G League, whatever. Like they've done really well. And in a small market, you have to hit on those. So I think overall there's like a decent picture to be painted there, but the question still comes down to, like, do you believe in Ja Morant as a top 5, top 10, top type player in the NBA, which you need to win titles? Do you believe in that core of Ja, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Bane? The West is tough per usual. So I don't know. I do think to the last piece of this, I think them addressing this now is a vote of confidence in keeping Ja Morant and in trying to make sure that you don't lose him, right? And I think to the extent that the offense, for whatever reason, I think there were some wires crossed somewhere along the way here about what they wanted to do. But I think the offense, to the extent that it moved away from Ja and it's now moving back toward him, for as long as this coach is in charge and probably under the next coach, like those are all probably good signs for keeping Ja happy, productive, and in Memphis.
When I think about Ja, though, like, he's a very exciting player, Ra. But I haven't seen the transformation of his game, right? Like, he's still so reliant on his athleticism and his will to play really, really hard. But the three-point shot is really alarming, right? Like, I think about a guy like Derrick Rose. Now, Derrick Rose had a lot more injuries, but he did eventually in his MVP season develop a jump shot. Like, that's something that he did. And it's really concerning that Ja's 25 years old right now and has played the league in a while, and it's been a glaring thing. This has been his jump shot. And you see videos too. I saw a video the other day on YouTube just about like how quirky his shot is and just like how it's never the same every time he shoots it, right? Like it's not something that he has worked on. And that is alarming. What does Ja need to do going forward to help the Grizzlies take the next step? Because I think a lot does ride on his shoulders. Like, I think he needs to stay healthy and he needs to evolve his game in order to be that franchise star for years to come.
Yeah, well, in fairness to Ja, because you're not wrong at all in terms of the shooting. I'll get to that, but I think the trajectory of that was altered obviously by injury and by suspension, right? So like he could have, even without the development of a jump shot, through sheer athleticism, explosion, just and everything that he brings to the table, continued to take steps in leveling that team up in a way that we just won't know because he didn't get an opportunity to over those years, right? And then, as far as the shooting goes, interestingly, because he has been injured a bit, like that's typically when guys start to realize that they got to change something, right? Like when the superpower starts to go, that's when you see guys start to level up the jump shooting. Like even LeBron, I think you could argue, hadn't put that level of work in to become as good a shooter as he is now earlier in the career. He just didn't have to, right? Like it was like
he probably didn't get his jumper until like 2009, 2010-ish, right? He was like 8 years in the league before he like got a jumper.
Yeah, like it wasn't that he couldn't shoot, but like you have these superpowers in there and no one can guard you when you bring them out, that it doesn't force your hand into developing other parts of your game that people that don't have them, kind of organically have to just to stay around the league. And so I think Ja's at a point now, Logan, where, he's always going to be a player that has to have the ball. That's the way he plays, right? Like, so like thinking that you're going to have him in any real capacity with someone else that would be the number one and just have him hanging around and becoming more of a spot shooter and sometimes catch and go guy. Like I don't ever really see that as what Ja Morant is going to do as a player, but he can continue to take strides as an offensive player. And some of that speaks to maturity, right? Some of that speaks to, level of professionalism and understanding that even if you still have these gifts, the injuries haven't robbed you of them right now. Eventually Father Time's going to catch up. And you're going to need a counterpunch to all of the great stuff that is your knockout weapon. And so like I don't know Ja at all. I don't know anyone in his camp. I'm just a fan. I just watch him play. And if you were to take some of the things that he does organically and pair them with some better skill work from the perimeter in terms of shooting the ball and stuff, you just become exponentially harder to guard, bro. It just becomes so difficult for dudes who are tasked with staying in front of you to guard you, right? And so he needs to continue to do that. And quite frankly, that's just the ascension of any star in the league who wants to win championships. You come in looking like one player. They're always they all have superpowers. They just look different, right? Whatever that is, you continue to to ride with that, but then you sharpen up all the other tools in your tool belt to the point where we can win a championship with you. And that's, that ultimately is going to be the deciding factor on whether or not Memphis, with the core that Howard talked about, and I like that core. I agree with him on some of the pieces they've been able to find and the development and all of those things. But Ja is the centerpiece of that. And thinking that you're either going to have to change that offense to play the way he wants to play, or you have to move him. He does not work in any other capacity at the level that you would need to pay him at. You know what I mean?
So, which leads me back to Howard Beck, who said what he said in San Francisco. Is there anything you want to amend from that? Like, as we talk about, as we're a month or 2 months later from there, like how does what you said in San Francisco evolve now to where we are now? How does it play a part into it? How does it change things? The floor is yours, Howard.
No, it's fascinating. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's really not that important. But what I said during our live show in San Francisco, which was, again, an absolute fucking blast. Thank you all for coming out. I hope we do it again.
I think we will.
I just threw out there that in the course of talking to people around trade deadline week and in asking people, especially in the wake of Luka, like what else to keep an eye on and what else is rumbling out there. And someone just kind of offhandedly, surprisingly to me, said, keep an eye on Ja. And the rationale, I don't think I elaborated that day, but I think I told you guys maybe on a follow-up podcast, because I went back to my notes and everything else about why this executive from another team had said this. And what they pointed to was exactly what we talked about at the beginning of this segment, which is the offense changed. Ja got de-emphasized. His numbers are down. His usage is down. His field goal attempts are down. His points are down. Everything's down. It doesn't look like a happy situation for him with this offense. That was why this person said to keep an eye on that situation in the first place. Flash forward now a couple of months, and where are we? Well, they fired Taylor Jenkins and the assistant coach who had installed that offense, this guy LaRoche, and they have installed on an interim basis a head coach who already, you've seen it the first couple of games, is moving the offense back toward Ja. I don't think this necessarily means that they were worried about losing Ja or a trade demand or anything else directly. It probably speaks to the more fundamental thing, which is that if you've got a player who's got a certain skill set and he's your best player, your franchise star, and you're not catering to those things, then maybe you've made an error, which they have now looked to rectify. So to the extent that this connects back to what I threw out there, regrettably, because of the way it went viral 2 months ago, I would just say...
I'm not mad at it, Ra. Are you? I'm not really mad at it.
Well, you guys weren't the ones taking shit from a bunch of freaks on social media.
We don't be on social like that. We be living our lives. We be outside.
I know, it's my bad. It's my fault. I bring it on myself. But yeah, like there was a reason for this other executive to say what they said at the time. Keep an eye on things. It was because of the way the offense had evolved and because of the way it had marginalized Ja and his best skills. And now that has been rectified. So I still think, everything always bears watching because, these things are fragile in the NBA. But I think to the extent that the Grizzlies have, made it, drawn a conclusion earlier than the rest of us would have expected it, but drew the conclusion, we're off on the wrong, we're heading the wrong direction, offensively and defensively. We need to fix it. We're firing Taylor Jenkins now. We'll see where this goes. If anything, I'm not saying that Ja was necessarily going to be asking out this summer anyway, but I think if anything, if you were going to put this on the Ja scale, how alarmed should people be about the possibility that he might be unhappy and want out? They're in a better place now than they were a few weeks ago, because now the offense is moving back toward him, and presumably the play will follow too. Like, I don't think we should put too much stock in their first two games, the first two losses under the new coach, because they're playing really good teams. So there's not a lot of time, 7 games left for them to try to find a different rhythm.
That's
here,
odd.
But we'll see. Anyway,
not a lot of time. 7 games.
Yeah. Rasha fucking hates this timing of this thing.
I really fucking hate it. I really do. I tried so hard, dude.
I
tried so hard.
I appreciate
whoever he
conviction.
was on the phone with, Roger, he was posting bail for him so bad, bro. I'm like, jeez. He was twisted.
No, listen, guys. I have this is 28 seasons, as you know, that I've covered this league, and the thing that frustrates me most as an objective observer who does not give a shit who wins, who loses, who succeeds, who fails. What does frustrate me is seeing teams that are just fucking flailing all over the place, have no idea what they're about, no particular values or convictions. The owner is letting people, flail in the breeze. And look, not for nothing, credit to the Grizzlies for this much. They, from all reports, fired Taylor Jenkins in person. There's one up on the Sacramento Kings who did not. And then their GM didn't talk for a long time, but Zach Kleiman got out there and talked to the local media for a couple of minutes. Whereas the Kings, from what I gather, kept anybody from speaking to it for like 2 months until Monty McNair finally addressed the media after they made the De'Aaron Fox trade. Like there are right and wrong ways to do this shit. And the Kings did it wrong. The Grizzlies, look, these are low bars.
A little less
The
wrong.
Kings did it wronger.
That's fine. But I also, again, to the conviction point,
I can see that though.
Act on your beliefs and don't worry about the rest of it. And I think too many teams are just afraid.
Roger
of
can get with
anything.
we did it, fuck you. You can get with that messaging, right?
Y'all ain't had that same energy when Nico traded
Luka?
Because it was a catastrophic mistake.
No, I'm just saying. I ain't getting I could agree, but I ain't getting no like, act on those convictions, bro. Hey, there's one thing I can't stand is convictions.
I'm talking to Howard right
act
now.
on those convictions.
You're talking to Howard right
fine.
now because this is a rare episode where me and Raja have been locked in the whole episode. Just like, yo, I agree with you. You're talking to Howard right now, Raja. You're not talking to me.
Okay.
I've been locked in with you this whole fucking pod. We both looked at each
That's
other.
all I'm gonna say, Howard. That's all I'm gonna say, bro.
I'm basing this on what I've gathered, but
that's fair.
But also, I'm not giving you credit for great conviction if your conviction was colossally stupid.
All time stupid.
All
All time stupid. All right. Okay. Let's get a handle on this. We will not be talking about the Phoenix Suns today. Just running out of time right now. I'm sorry, guys. But
they're too depressing anyway.
But we already talked about the
down.
Memphis Grizzlies being depressing. But read my story on the Phoenix Suns called "The Dying Embers of the Phoenix Suns' Historic Flameout." Only on theringer.com.
Jesus.
Speaking of convictions that went wrong.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, man.
We're all in.
I filibustered long enough here to not have to say bad shit about the Suns. I did my job.
Good job.
I did my job,
Bro, before we get to mailbag, Raj,
and yet you somehow shoehorned in your defense of Nico again. Good job.
No, I wasn't defending Nico at all. I'm not defending.
What he did with Nico is he sees Nico just down bad. He's like, he does say like you was wrong, but he just gave him a tap on the shoulder, like get it better next time, buddy.
Yeah, that's my guy, man. Like I can't defend that, but that's my guy.
But Roger, the trick is there will not be a next time.
It's tough.
Cliff, what's going on, buddy? We talked about crash outs. You know, Philly's the land of the crash outs.
No, it's not. I thought the Bay was.
Huh? The Bay.
How you make that face?
Hey, I played pre-pod. You guys don't know anything about this. I sent Cliff a song by Drew Down, and he was just very, very, very flabbergasted by what he heard. He was just like, yeah.
I love the Bay Area sound, man. What's going on, Howard? What's up, Raj? What's going on, man? You fresh off vacation?
What's up?
How you feeling? How y'all feeling?
I just got over a week of COVID, so other than that,
man,
that's still a fucking thing, bro.
still a fucking thing, dude. I finally tested negative this morning.
Two people are mad on this pod. Raj is mad because he's not on vacation no more. He just started. He was like, "I'm here, fucking Monday. So what the hell? I'm here." And then Howard's just mad because he's just mad because he's Howard Beck.
All right, man, let's get this first one in. This is Draft Fix from Charlie. What to do, real ones? Welcome back, Logan. Congrats to you and Miss Lady on welcoming new life to the world. I'm a father as well. 2 boys, 4 and 7. Enjoy them now because it only goes downhill from here. LOL, just playing. Congrats,
No,
bro.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
I would like to hear the panel with an answer to a suggestion to help with tanking. I'd like to hear what Howard, MF, and Beck thinks. What if you had to win a certain amount of games to be eligible to have your team's name in a hat for certain picks? In order to be considered for the first 3 picks of the draft, teams would have to have at least 20 wins. With picks 4 and 5, teams would need to at least have 15 games. Picks 6 through 10, teams with 14 or less wins. They could be dispersed among those teams from a drawing of some sort. Kenny Smith said on Inside the NBA, you could at least get 25 wins in the league just from playing hard. I agree with that. Raja, do you second that? Philly has shown us, sorry, Cliff, LOL, that just because you're tanking or positioning your team for better draft capital, that the number 1 pick will always bear fruit. That pick is not always going to be Cooper Flagg, Bron, Wemby, Cade Cunningham, Ant-Man. It's no guarantee those top 3 picks are going to turn the franchise around. But if those picks would go to a team that has some sort of direction instead of betting it all one guy to turn them around, I think it would make a world of a difference in gameplay. Raja is always telling us that it is hard just being the guy night in and night out. If and when that draft pick doesn't work out like intended, he said attended, but you are still stuck at the bottom. Just my thoughts. Y'all be cool real ones. Yee! Bay Area lingo, whatever that means. I don't know how to do it.
Big yee! That's what he did. Big Raja fan. I like the idea. I'm not mad at it. I like the idea. Maybe he needs to get hired by the competition committee. That sounds fun. I like that. I mean, it promotes more competition, and we actually get to see rookies on like good teams. You don't get to see that much.
What was? Could you give me the number of games again, bro? It was a long question, so I kind of.
I got you. All right. So for the number of games here, let me run that back. So it says here, in order to be considered for the first 3 picks of the draft, teams would have to at least win 20 games. With picks 4 and 5, teams would have to win at least 15 games. Picks 6 through 10, teams with 14 or less, and they could be dispersed among those teams from a drawing of some sort.
I always like competition. Look, I mean, play basketball for a living. Okay, I'm not the most intelligent person in the world, so trying to figure out how to fix all these broken. Like,
shoot yourself some bail. You're fucking smart.
Give me some grace. Give me some grace.
I'm not gonna let you do that.
But I will say this: I'm always for competition. For the prize, right? So if the number 1 pick is the prize, then I'm always for a more competitive landscape to get that. Like I just think that's healthier for teams and for leagues. However, if because you're just so bad and the players that you have on your team like aren't good enough to get it done, how do you get a team out of that space if they can never have a shot at the best players? Like, so I don't have the answer to that, right? Like you're stuck in this spot if you're a bad team of you can't really. It's hard to entice good players to come there via free agency in any real capacity because you guys are a dumpster fire, right? No one wants to go there. And if you're not going to get a shot at any of the best talent coming out in any given year, I don't see how those teams don't just stay mired in the shit that they're in. So like, I mean, I kind of like it, but at the same time, I don't. I'm kind of iffy.
The whole reason we have a reverse order draft is to help the teams that need it most, right? That's the whole point of the exercise, right? But the second you make it like if it were purely reverse order, as it once upon a time, then the worst team always gets the best player. And so now you have incentive to be really, really bad and you have the race to the bottom, right? So you get the lottery, then you get different versions of the lottery and all the different reforms over the years, right? That's how we got here. But the league still has an interest in trying to make sure that bad teams have an avenue to get better. Whether it was because injuries, whether it was because they had a star who retired, whether it's they're just in a small market, nobody wants to go there. There's only 3 ways to get stars, right? Draft, trade, free agency. Superstars don't go to certain markets in free agency. And they might keep you from acquiring them in trade too by saying, I'm not re-signing with you. So the draft is the best way for smaller markets or colder markets, less attractive markets to get guys. The league's got to balance all of this. So like to the email from the listener about trying to incentivize teams to win down the stretch to dissuade tanking, there have been versions of this batted around, right? There's the whether you lock it in at the at All-Star or short few weeks after that, whatever, the losses matter before that certain point, and then the wins matter after that. So now your lottery balls are connected to how much you win after, say, whatever, March 1st. And you add that to your losses before. Like there are stuff like that people have batted around over the years, and they're all interesting and they all have some merit. Flattening the lottery odds even further so that there's even less incentive to be one of the worst teams. But now there might be incentive to go from 10th to 7th, or from just inside the playoff range to just outside of playoff range. So you're constantly, every time you tinker, you're just moving where the inflection point is or where the incentive is to maybe lose in March and April instead of winning. So it's a really delicate balance, in fairness. And the league has grappled with all this over years. I will just say, and I put this line in my story about tanking last week on theringer.com. People can go check that one out. But this is not the worst we've ever seen, right? The mid 2010s, when the process was going on in Philly and a lot of other teams were doing various things, the especially the multi-year tank, the league freaking hates the multi-year tank that like the Philly, like the Sixers did.
I mean, damn.
But
you get it every
producer,
episode.
Producer Cliff, it's your team that is at fault for all this, really.
The branded tank?
The branded tank. But
that didn't work out. That
right
didn't
now,
work out bad though. Like it, you got 2 franchise stars.
No, I always say it worked.
It
like
worked,
you got Embiid and Simmons. That Embiid can't stay healthy, and that Ben Simmons like suddenly forgot how to play basketball or whatever, and had back problems. It did work. You got 2 franchise studs, and that's the point of the exercise. So teams are always.
And you had you had the Markelle Fultz.
When you could have
Jason
Tatum.
They could. I mean, they would have produced. But you know what I mean? Yeah.
No, you're going to have misfires. The thing
Cliff.
is, the draft is a crapshoot to some extent. You're going to have misfires. So when you give yourself more shots at a top 3 pick, now you can have misfires like Okafor and Fultz and still come out ahead of the game with Simmons and Embiid. And who knows if they had just kept Jimmy Butler years ago, where things might have gone. But anyway, sorry, Cliff. There's the incentives to tank are always going to be there. This is not the worst version of what we've seen, but when you have teams like Toronto and Utah and others where they're literally like benching guys to start the 4th quarter so that they can put their G League players out there because they're trying to make sure they lose the game, like that's not good for the league. I don't like this stuff. I don't hand wring over this stuff. I'm not pro clutch. I don't really care, but it's a problem for the league because the league feels it's a problem for the league. They have an image problem. They have people turning off their TV and complaining that there's nobody worth watching in March problem. They have teams complaining about each other as they try to out-tank each other and them sneering at each other problem. Like this is an ongoing concern for the league. It's ongoing conversation. I have no doubt the competition committee is going to be addressing this in full in the offseason. I won't be surprised in the least if we see further reforms by next season.
All right, good stuff. Blame the Sixers. Next question.
Always.
Pistons and Wolves Scuffle question. This is from Robert Bruza. Hey, Row Ones, Pistons fan here. I was watching the Pistons-Wolves game when the squabble happened, and like most fans, I instantly felt defensive of my team, the Pistons.
Wow.
When I'm mostly interested in it is that Dante DiVincenzo seemed really focused on Ron Holland, really interested in trying to flex and dominate Holland, be the tough guy. Common sports thing, but Dante DiVincenzo is 28 years old and Ron Holland is a rookie 19-year-old. Obviously, they are illegal adults, but I think it is weird and inappropriately aggressive to target someone with that kind of age gap. Holland seemed a little bit more shaken up after the scuffle, which makes sense to me. Raja, what do you think? Is there any additional responsibility for a 28-year-old in the league versus a rookie when it comes to violence on the court? Does Dante DiVincenzo get cred for bullying a 19-year-old? Am I making too much of the age gap? Thanks, Robbie B.
Let's go to the crash out correspondent, Raja Bell.
Wow. Robbie B. No, dude. Like you're in a professional basketball league, homie. Like you old enough to be here, you old enough to get these hands if push comes to shove. So just know that.
Squabble up.
I mean, bullying is a real thing. Like it's a real thing. So like I can't apply it in this context. Like that's a step too far for me, Robbie B. Whether he had something going on, or whether they had something going on that caused him to be more of a target in the eventual like scuffle than anybody else, like I can't really speak to. Like I didn't see the whole game, but I don't see it. No, like we're out there. I can't worry about how old you are, yo.
Hey, let me see your birth certificate real quick so I can fight you.
Bro, no, yeah, that's like being in a club back in the day and shit starts popping off and you got to ask somebody like, hey man, can I see your ID real quick before
this bottle gets hit off my head?
I can't worry about that right now. So no, I don't see it as that. I do understand like being a fan of the Pistons, like, you know, fans. Bigger picture, that's always so fascinating to me is how like two fans from different sides from different sides can see the exact same thing and just come up with these two completely opposite arguments as to why it happened and who's at fault and who did what. And like an impartial person sitting there is like, both of you guys are crazy, bro. Like that shit just happened. Like it just happened. We talk about somebody getting bullied by a 28-year-old because he's 19. Robbie, thanks for listening, bro. I love you. I ain't mean to but no. You out there on an NBA court. Now, how about this though, Robbie, to just, if Dante DiVincenzo is playing at, like, let's say Villanova in the summertime, and there is a 19-year-old that's still in college and he's hooping, and Dante DiVincenzo runs up on him and starts, trying to fight him in that context, like, I could see that a little bit, like, right? But we're in the same.
Didn't John
league.
Morant do that same?
Yeah,
Didn't John Morant do that?
Say that. John Morant did that in his part.
Like, wasn't a young boy hooping at his crib or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different for me. But when we're out here on the same court, like getting paid by the same people, representing the same league, I don't see the age gap as being any kind of factor in it. I personally.
Yeah.
Copy.
One more question.
Let's see. This is really random. This is from Buster Brzezinski. NBA player heel turn. Logan, you might be good at this one. In 2025, John Cena is a bad guy. Who in the NBA has had a heel turn lately? Best one I could think of is Kevin Durant. I don't agree with that. But from the guy who played Madden with school kids in Seattle to now been a heel for years. Big fan from day one, Mr. Brez.
That boy's name is Buster Brzezinski?
That's fire.
Yeah, that's what's up.
That's fire.
By the way, I don't think, just me personally, I don't think KD turned heel. I just think he's just fed up with the BS.
I think everything that KD has done in that way has kind of just been like whatever the media environment has suggested he is at that point. Like, he really just wanted to come to debate a hoop. Like, I think if you ask him in the moment and after, he really just wanted to come to hoop. And then everything went the way it did. The last heel turn from a player, was it Ja?
Is that a heel turn though?
I don't know.
Or is that just somebody crashing out?
I mean,
no, I'm dead
that could
serious.
be both, right? I mean, Bron, I guess, was a heel turn.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Bron in 2010
actually, like, consciously,
it's literally the heel.
became a heel because of this, right? Like, he just, which made it fascinating, the move all the more fascinating. I was trying to find something more that was more high profile, but, like, I think that's what it is.
That's
like,
also 15 years ago. Like, is there anything since?
Nah.
Who? Wait, could it be from like a owner franchise that's like not necessarily a player? Like, could a franchise have done like a crazy heel turn or like a move or something? I'm not sure.
Oh, Nico Harrison, heel turn.
I'm signing off. Goodbye.
All right. That was another episode.
Enjoy yourselves.
That was another episode of Real Wins. I am Logan Murdock. That is Roger Bell. That's Howard motherfucking Beck. Cliff on the boards. Victoria on the video. Man, this is a great episode. Talk to y'all on Friday. Me and Ra and potentially a special guest. All this shit. So bye. Must be 21 years and older and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 and older and present in D.C. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rghelp.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.